Welcome to Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast. Join the podcast mogul Phil Better as he interviews successful entrepreneurs that make their living in the digital world. Now, let's join your host, Phil Better, and his special guest today on Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast. Welcome back to another incredible episode of Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast. I am, of course, the podcast mogul Phil Better, and today we are joined by a visionary entrepreneur whose journey is nothing short of inspiring. Now, I know I say that a lot, but everybody get ready for this, because after our guest retired from a successful 3-decade career in law, our guest decided to spend the last decade building Hoon Arts Fair Trade, a trailblazing business connection to the Silk Road artisans with customers across 4 continents. And as not only that, they are a pioneer in bringing Tajiki handcraft. I'm probably mispronouncing some of these words, but my guest is going to make sure that I correctly identify them in the future. But to the U.S. market, these are small places, the stands of the world, if you will, the Afghanistans, the Tajikistans, all the former, USSR countries that are locked together. Now they're separate. She's opening that market to the U.S. market, to the worldwide market. But she also has empowered over 100 artisans from the region, mainly women in rural villages, to earn recognition as cultural ambassadors for 3 Central Asian countries. Like, do you understand what she is doing, ladies and gentlemen? But her impact doesn't stop there. No, because that's not enough. With her new venture, Impact Storytelling for Results, she's helping purpose-driven entrepreneurs and nonprofit leaders harness the power of storytelling to simplify, elevate their marketing efforts. Her passion for amplifying the voices of others, whether they're artisans, entrepreneurs, business leaders, or nonprofit leaders even, it drives her mission to create a world where common humanity is recognized and celebrated. So she's amplifying those voices. I love her. We've talked. If you're watching this video, just behind her is a beautiful piece of artwork that I'm probably going to try and get from her. But ladies and gentlemen, please get ready for the incredible story of Rikki. Rikki, thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you, Phil, for having me. As I've told you before, there's nothing better than show and tell.
No, it's very true. Especially in your world, because of storytelling, it's show and tell to the nth degree. You told me a lot when we first jumped on a quick call. I told you how beautiful I love that piece of art behind you. I'm still it's probably where I'm going to be staring the whole episode, because it's so gorgeous. And I'm definitely going to make sure that we get a picture of that for my audience that is just listening. But Rikki, you're here now. We're going to start with the biggest question. After 3 decades working in law, what made you decide, hey, I'm not going to stay retired. I'm going to try this new venture, this entrepreneurial venture? What made you decide to do that?
Well, actually, it was a leap of faith. I had no intention of being an entrepreneur when I retired. What I did want to do was get back to the world of cross-cultural connections and international travel and meeting people from different places. And I started volunteering with a local organization that hosts short-term professional exchange delegations. We hosted a couple of delegations from Tajikistan, which, for those of you, which included me at the time, who don't know where that is, it's immediately north of Afghanistan, west of China, and a couple of countries, a couple of stands south of Russia. So that'll locate you in Central Asia. Long story short, the second delegation included a young man who works in ecotourism and handicraft promotion named Bahreddin. They spent a week in Albuquerque, and at the farewell party held in my living room, which is behind the screen right here, after we finished our Kentucky Fried Chicken, dinner to send them off the next morning, when it came my turn to stand up and make my little farewell speech, I heard myself saying, well, I'll do it. I'll open the market for Tajik handicrafts in America, thinking, how hard can it be? And I've been telling myself since then, thank God I didn't know what I didn't know.
Yeah, because like most entrepreneurs, we do stuff without knowing how difficult it is. And then we realize how difficult it is. And then we're like, well, I'm already halfway done. I might as well complete this. And then but realize if ever I knew how difficult it was, I would never have jumped into this.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So with being the cultural ambassador to these Central Asian countries that pretty much never had access to a North American market where we are ravenous for amazing pieces of handcrafted art. Um, what was one of the first challenges that you faced? Because this is something that's completely out of your wheelhouse. You went from dealing with the law, we're in a law firm, dealing with all that, to now having to deal with the international world and cultural differences and how you can import and export and all that stuff, and dealing with governments that are ever changing in the time. What was one of the first things that you did, like apart from joining this amazing organization of cultural breath of air? What did you do? Like you finally decided, okay, I'm going to open the market. What did you do? What was the next step?
Well, the first thing I did was talk to a young friend of mine. I'm past 50, shall we say. I talked to a young whippersnapper and said, so what should I do now? And we talked about, you need a website. And she first sent me to Etsy. I read the instructions, I read the application. It turns out I wasn't eligible to sell on Etsy because I'm neither making nor designing most of my products. At the time, I was designing none of them. Now I do co-design, so I have a few items listed on Etsy. So that meant, oh my God, what else am I going to do? And somebody else, I don't remember who, recommended, oh, well, Shopify is what you need to do. So I went on Shopify, and you have to understand, when I started, it was like, website. I'd had a secretary. Lawyers have secretaries.
You were doing all the little itty bitty stuff. You were like, oh, it's done. Okay, yeah, just go over here, fill out this, and we're good. You were.
Here's my handwritten contract. Make it so. And so I stumbled my way through choosing a theme. I had no idea what a theme was for a website, but I picked one, a free one, of course, and built my website and took pictures. And I look back at some of those early pictures and it's like, oh my God, what did I think I was doing? And I'm one of those newbies who, back in the old days, who thought, oh, well, I have a website now. The customers are just going to start rolling in, build it, and they'll come. And it didn't quite happen that way.
Surprising. You built it and they didn't come. Who could have thought of that?
And the other thing I did right at the beginning was, through my volunteer work, I had learned about a local chapter of an organization called the National Association of Women Business Owners. And it's like, oh, that sounds like a place I need to be.
So at least two of the boxes out of the number of boxes they have.
So I joined that organization and joined a mastermind group in that organization. And between those two experiences, that was the introduction to the very steep learning curve I had. But it started me on a journey of realizing that it's a perpetual learning curve, that things are changing, there's new things to be learned, you have to be adaptable. What works at one time may not work the next time. So although the beginning was quite painful when I realized just how much I didn't know, it taught me some of the skills of adaptability and being open to learning from other people and building relationships that I really hadn't ever had to experience in my law career.
So once you solve that itty bitty problem of websites don't just automatically bring people to you, um what did you do? Like, what were the steps that you needed so that Hunarts would come to the next level to be something that wasn't just an idea? Like, I know a lot of entrepreneurs or a lot of people who want to become entrepreneurs, they start a lot of little projects and they say, oh, this is going to be it. And then shiny object syndrome pops up and they go, okay, that's going to work. That's fine. That's done. And jump onto the next one and jump onto the next one. Well, they leave this dust of endless projects and businesses that they in their wake, but you've seemed to have said no because you were so passionate about opening the market. What was the next step for you? Like, you figured out the website was up, you did that mastermind, it helped you get clarification on what you needed. What was the next step? Because you're going from a law, which, let's be honest, law is pretty black and white.
Actually, it's very gray, but
there is gray.
Another episode.
That's for the law episode, but for most of us who don't work in the law world, we see it as very black and white. Here's the law. Did you do it? Did you not do it? Right? And then when you get to the courtroom, that's when all the gray starts showing up, and because you got human emotions in there. But you're going from somewhere where pretty much it's written down exactly what you need to do, until building it yourself, and in essence writing the laws and the gray matter for your business. Like, how did that transition? What was it like for you going from something that was more kind of like analytical? Because lawyers are usually very kind of like, there's processes and procedures and all this, and you're going in,
brain.
yeah, it's very left brain. There's not much creativity until you get into the courtroom. And that's when all the fun stuff, and that's the speakers. And there's some lawyers have it, some lawyers don't, but they touch a bit on the creative side. You're going fully into the creative world. You're using the right side. You're doing art, which is fully right brain and creative. What did you do? Like, what were some of the steps you took? How did you get clear on your vision on what Hoon Arts was, and then which also led you to impact storytelling, which we're going to touch on. But I love art, so I'm going to kind of maybe say a bit more on the art part. But like, what did you do to solidify Hoon Arts so that it wouldn't become kind of like a relic of the past, if you will?
Probably two threads that are still the cornerstone of Hoon Arts. One of them is learning, and the other one is building relationships. And on the learning side, I've invested over the years literally tens of thousands of dollars in coaching, business coaching, training. I've also taken a lot of free webinars, like many entrepreneurs, especially who work in the digital arena. And I continue to do that. I'm in a coaching program right now I just finished a parallel course on digital course design. So it's a constant path of lifetime learning. And despite all my best efforts, I can't do it for free.
As much as we would love to do things for free and just give away the knowledge that we have and the stuff that we have for free, unfortunately, there's these pesky things called bills that we have to pay.
Yes. And so it's been I don't think there's ever been a time where I haven't been involved over the last 10 years in some kind of learning activity, whether it's reading a book, being in a coaching program, taking a course, participating in an online challenge. One of my favorite online challenges was a 5-day podcast guesting challenge.
Oh, I'm not going to lie. I kind of enjoy those for obvious reasons, but we won't go into that. But yeah.
So that's on the learning side. And on the building relationships side, you have to understand when I started, I had spent 30 plus years avoiding having to meet strangers. And I stayed far, far away from anything that looked like marketing or rainmaking or bringing in new clients. I just wanted to stay in the background. And I liked working with my clients mostly, but the idea of walking into a room full of strangers or even setting up a table at a little arts and craft event and having to talk to strangers was sort of a terrifying experience for me when I started. And it's the experience of having to sell stuff was something entirely new to me. And although I like people and I like interacting with people, basically I'm an introvert. So too many people, particularly strangers, is hard for me. And that was a big challenge for me when I got started. But fortunately, I had my NABO friends, National Association of Women Business Owners, who persuaded me that I was going to have to get past
that little hump, that little fear. That, to be fair, I think 80% of the population is born with that fear. It's the fear of public speaking, really.
As long as I can be the star of the show, I'm happy. I actually taught law classes at a business school for several years. And that was fun because I got to be in charge.
You didn't rely on other people's expectations. Like when you're selling, you're hoping someone's going to be here, but these people are paying to be there. They're sold already. You just show up, give your stuff. But flipping around and having to do all that hard work. Again, you had a secretary do all the hard work for you beforehand.
So learning to talk to strangers, experimenting with different venues for sales, building relationships in multiple organizations. I also joined the Fair Trade Federation. I participated in other local networking groups. Uh, unfortunately, it was not an instant process like much of entrepreneurship.
Yeah, it's a lot of trial by error. I find in entrepreneurship.
Yes, there was a lot of trial by error. But what always drove me and persuaded me, kept me moving forward, is the vision that if I can just bring people together, East and West, and they can start to see each other as human beings, and that the art is that wonderful bridge where you don't have to have a common background to appreciate art. It's the hook that allows people to start talking, start a conversation, start to appreciate the cultural heritage. Then we can shift the perspectives. And that's something that's worth struggling with, because the vision is something that has always driven me.
It's great because I know with Hoon Arts you were looking to, help artisans get into a market where they can make a living, be it a small living or a great living, depending on if there are hits the big side. But then you transition from there. You got that working. It's great. I've taken a few looks at your website. There's art there that I'm going to be like definitely buying because they're gorgeous pieces of work. But then you moved over into impact storytelling for results, which I'm going to make this assumption, and please correct me if the assumption is wrong, but it's pretty much everything you learned from creating Hoon Arts and making that story, because storytelling sells. You took that knowledge and did you repackage it for to help other business owners and entrepreneurs understand and not go through the trouble of having to figure it out all by themselves and do the trial by fire and trial by error?
I'd say there were two critical, or maybe three critical points. Steve Jobs said you can never connect the dots going forward, only
Backwards.
One of them was my first VIP day with my first business coach. And I was telling her all the wonderful stories of the artisans I was working with. And she was the first one who had me see that there was also value in my own story. It was like, really? Why would that be interesting to people? So there was something about my story which didn't seem valuable to me, but I kept that idea in the back of my head. And as I started doing more speaking engagements over the years, people would tell me they loved the stories, the behind the scenes stories of how I did it, how it worked, what it was like to work with the artisans. A next piece is I got involved with a global grassroots organization called Catalyst. I think they've rebranded. I think it's Catalyst now. But basically, it's an organization of social entrepreneurs from around the world who, it's not just artisans, it's social entrepreneurship around the world. And I was part of a team that put together a webinar on impact storytelling. And thinking about the impact that you want to achieve and then communicating that impact to your audience in an effective way that is inspires them to buy, inspires them to donate, inspires them to take action consistent with your vision of what will make the world a better place. And a lot of that discussion was around tips and techniques and ways of looking at things, video, which stories to use. But in the back of my head, I was thinking, well, I don't have big statistics to tell people. I can't talk about the millions of dollars that I've generated. Does that count? And I had a conversation with a Dutch entrepreneurial leader who works with artisans in Africa. And she helped me see that the qualitative stories also have major value, maybe major inspirational value, and they can be quantified if you set up your metrics in the right way. So that's point 2. Point 3 was when I had a conversation with the embroidery artist who designed and actually stitched that piece behind me, Munira. And I asked her, at this point, we'd been working together probably 8 years. And I asked her, what has made the most difference for you? What has been the biggest impact for you in working with me and with Hunarts over these years? And I expected her to say something that was related to sales, that it had generated revenue, it had helped the rural village ladies improve their standard of living. She said nothing about money. What she said was what made the biggest difference for her was my support for her mission of cultural heritage preservation. And it was like, and that support gave her the courage to continue pursuing her path. And it was like a light bulb went off about and I really got in a visceral way that stories of impact belong to the person who is impacted. And they are far more powerful and inspirational when they are told from the perspective of the person experiencing the impact. And it was like ding, 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 light bulb, light bulb.
You hit the jackpot at the casino.
I had always understood that the ethical concept that you don't want to tell a story about somebody that they're not comfortable you sharing, that's a fundamental ethical principle. But the concept of actually asking the people impacted to share their perspective on the impact is far more powerful, because it's usually much farther up, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Money is down there at survival level. But when you dig in, and it doesn't matter whether you're talking about artisans working in a rural village or somebody remodeling a house or somebody working as a virtual assistant, what makes a difference to their clients is almost never tied to dollars. And it it became clearer and clearer as I talked to people that that concept was not part of the conventional marketing wisdom of how you market your services. You as the entrepreneur are supposed to identify your ideal customer, who, by the way, is usually a fantasy until you've been in business for quite some time and you've actually got clients and can talk to them. Identify their pain or an intense desire and then speak to that. But when you talk to an actual client and have them tell the story from their perspective, they go way higher up the hierarchy of needs. For example, I had a client of mine have one of those aha moments when we were talking about the power of her services as a technology coach for coaches primarily. Students in coaching programs who would get flummoxed by the technology. And she had an aha moment in talking to a client when they told her that it wasn't about now they're generating all this money. It's now they have the confidence to figure things out.
I love that.
And that's the central concept behind impact storytelling, that everybody has stories of impact, and they are not the stories that you can invent for them. When they're genuine, authentic stories told from that person's perspective, it creates the impact. People, your ideal customers, see themselves in that story. Every time a marketing guru tells me that if I follow these 5 steps, I'll have a 6-figure income in only 90 days, it's like, yeah, right. But when I hear a story about someone telling their own story about how working with a coach or a consultant, or even working with a designer, an interior designer, to remodel my living room, that story has an emotional impact for me that lands with the ideal customer in a way that the traditional, you figure out their pain point and then you agitate their pain point and speak to that and show how your solution is going to solve their problem, when they may, starting out, they may not recognize and they may identify their problem, but what they get is way more valuable than the solution to the problem they typically identified first.
Love it. My God. And I hate that we're coming to an end here. Like, this is ridiculous. We're getting into the meat and potatoes, the real good gravy part of the interview, but we're gonna have to wrap up soon. So I'm gonna hit you with 2 questions, and then we're gonna finish here. My first one is because going back to the art, because you're tapping into a gold mine of different types of artists that haven't been really, open to our market before. Yes, Central Asia, they have all their artwork there and they're flushed and people are overwhelmed with the amount of art, but we over here, we're starving for that art. I want to know, because you're working so closely with these artisans from Central Asia, what has been the most surprising or rewarding cultural lesson you've learned from the artisans themselves, and how has that enriched your life and, you know, impacted how you do business, because it's a completely different way. It's the, like East versus West, it's the East mentality. And on top of it, it's even more granular because you're working with small rural communities that have been, functioning pretty much the same way since they were founded and didn't get those upgrades, that most of the country has. How has how has that impacted you?
I think the most surprising and inspiring part of what I do is learning about the cultural heritage built in to every piece of artwork, every genre of art, uh, and the heritage, the meaning behind each element. For example, this pattern is a tree of life. It is, and it symbolizes long life, growth, prosperity, but colors have symbolism. Every pattern has symbolism. Most of the art pieces are derived from products that were created to be used as part of culture, not to sit on a shelf to sell to tourists. For example, this particular embroidery style is often referred to as Suzanne embroidery. A Suzanne is a large panel of embroidery, typically 2 meters by 3 meters. And you will see Suzanne panels, tapestries, embroidered tapestries, hanging in museums, in public buildings, and in the homes of wealthier people. But traditionally, the Suzanne object was started as soon as a baby girl was born, and the family members would start to embroider it, and it would be finished before she was of marriageable age. And then following the wedding ceremony, family members would hold this tapestry over the heads of the wedding couple as they walked from the gathering point to the bridal chamber. And it was designed to protect them from the evil eye. And learning about the history, the meaning, the culture behind each of these pieces has been the hook to tell the stories. It's been a hook for people to see inside. I often refer to Hoon Arts as not being just a window, it's a door. It's a doorway because we walk you through the door. This is not the Potemkin village where you look through and see the pretty stuff. We walk you through the door and see what's going on behind. And that has been incredibly valuable and inspiring for me.
Oh, just hearing that story of knowing that when I look at these panels that are hanging, that there's more to it, just saying, oh, look, it's a pretty thing on a wall. There's so much more cultural to it. And I am so thankful that we've connected, Rikki, because my education now is next level when it comes to this. I'm someone who loves learning about cultures. I have a plan of traveling the world soon. So like just knowing when I go over, to one of the stands, it's like, oh, I know something a bit about that, and just showing that their culture has permeated so far into the Western world is amazing. And I thank you so much for being here. I'm going to hit you with my last question. This is the most important question in my book, I think, because it gives us a chance to reflect on our lives. But I have your 10-year-old self, Rikki. She is jawing my ear off. I must say, she's such a fun person. She's not scared of meeting new people for sure. But what is one piece of advice you would love to be able to hand back to your 10-year-old self?
It would be try things that you're not good at. Learn to fail. I was an A+ student, and I really failed for the first time when I started Hunarts. And it was painful. And every step was like cutting off a finger because things didn't work instantly. And my hard work didn't necessarily translate into the results I hoped for. And I wish I'd learned to fail at a young age. And that's what I tell my grandchildren now, is try new things. Try things that you're not good at. Do things that give you the chance to fail. And then you'll really see what matters in life and what inspires you.
I love that. I love that. It hits it's prickling something in the back of my brain. Something similar that I heard was, it's very rare that we get to be a beginner again when we're an expert already. And so it's very important to always learn to be a beginner so that you can help new people. And I think your advice saying, hey, fail at as many things as you possibly can is very apropos, because it's very important. Because if we don't understand how failure feels when it really matters and we do fail at something that's important, we don't know how to deal with it. But if we already know how to deal with failures, we already know how to overcome the failure. I think, Rikki, you blew my mind more ways than Sunday. I'm going to jump off. I want you to tell my audience how they either can get some of that amazing artwork from Hunart, or if they're looking to get that impactful storytelling to take their business to that next level because they need that help, how they can get in touch with you, how they can work with you, whatever is what you want to tell them. Please let them know. The floor is yours.
Well, Hunarts.com is the website for Hunarts Fair Trade that has our products available for purchase. It has our blog with all these wonderful stories about the artisans and the culture, and lots of additional information about the company, the artists behind the products. And if you're interested in the storytelling side, you can reach me by writing to impactstorytelling@hunarts.com. Again, that's impactstorytelling@hunarts.com.
I apologize. I was looking at the website. I got lost in the artwork. I really should not have access to the web while I'm doing these interviews because sometimes I just get lost. But Rikki, I want to thank you so much for being here, sharing your story. When I first jumped on a call with you a couple of weeks ago, I knew I never thought that this is where we'd be coming. But the art that you have shown me, the stories you shared with us today, I can't. I'm just so thankful to have you on, and I'm looking forward to getting a little piece of art as well, so that I can adorn my walls. Maybe we'll put it right over here, so to make it a little more than just white space. But Rikki, thank you so much for being here.
Well, it's been my pleasure. As I said, I love show and tell.
It's true. To my audience, make sure you check out the show notes down below, because there's going to be all the links there, how to stay in touch with Rikki, how to check out the artwork that I know a lot of you are probably going to be wanting to see. And I'm definitely going to be using the cover art to showcase some of the amazing art that is on the website. So Rikki, thank you so much for being here. Thank you to my audience for listening. Thank you for sharing so much amazing stories. And as I always say to my audience, always invest in yourself.